Hello and welcome to what's the name of the channel? Oh, Extreme Gameplays, where I play games stylishly. But not today. Recently, I did a God of War 3 Paint Plus run with Apollo's costume again, but I decided to give it a little twist compared to all my other playthroughs. I decided to both have my usual fun in replaying the game, but on top of that, also do a little something people like to call a read-through. Essentially, you do play the game, of course, but you have to read everything in the game. Every piece of writing, be it a book or a note on the ground or a writing on the wall, everything. Now, I'm not usually the type of guy to care about these things. After all, I'm here for the gameplay and the boobs. But let me tell you something, brother. You forgot one crucial thing. Two, actually. A, this is God of War. B, this is God of War 3. With two shield retrospectives expressing my love to the game, one Oko showcasing the hard times between me and the game, and a profile picture with Starry Nights behind it, or in front of it, I think it's already clear how much I love the game. God of War 3 is my favorite subgenre in life, and is the only currently available gender that can be played besides male and female without any drama. Society just collectively agreed to this, by the way. The game has a very beautiful story to tell with these awesome writings, and I'm here just to present that. But before I do that, let me clear up some stuff, more specifically regarding a later section we'll reach in this video. The thing I'm trying to get out the way is that God of War 1 and 3 are way too similar. I'm not gonna talk about the gameplay that also happens to be way too similar. We're here for the story. Let's leave the gameplay for another day, but just know that it's very similar in a lot of aspects. The aspect we're gonna be tackling today, of course, is the story. God of War 3's story is not as deep and as great as God of War 1, but it sort of follows the same formula. Spoilers ahead, but this is sort of like the Metal Gear Solid 2 debacle, a simulation with the goal of recreating Shadow Moses. Except in here, they're trying to recreate Shadow of Colossus. That joke would have fit so well if the Colossus was in God of War 3 rather than God of War 2. But we can't have good things in life, whatever, he's a job application meme. Boo. Basically what I'm trying to say is, you are Kratos. You have to go get Pandora's box to defeat a god. You go on a set path and reach an enormous puzzle area that all comes together by the end thanks to you. You align the puzzle, get the box, kill the big dog, the end. Of course, there were differences in how the story was told. God of War 3's telling of this type of trope took a more Attitude Era approach. But there's something else similar between God of War 1 and 3's way of storytelling, something else that is really quite nice. That being a side story being told through text about some mad architect that made a highlight part of each game respectively that happens to relate to what Kratos went through. The story gets told in text form. It goes thoroughly on about how this mad architect did his thing, both sides of the story being an order from Zeus as well. Basically, remember when I mentioned how there's a highlight puzzle area in both games that you ultimately figure out to achieve the box? God of War 1 had Pathos Verdus, who was the mad architect behind the Temple of Pandora in God of War 1. God of War 3, on the other hand, had a certain someone we meet late into the game called Daedalus. Daedalus was the mad architect who made the labyrinth in God of War 3. Now, if you weren't paying attention to his writings and documenting of the entire project as he was building it, this cutscene will sort of mean nothing by the time you reach it. Why the hell did he even mistake me for Icarus? I'm hiding that dump truck pair of wings behind my clapping glutes every step of the way as I was told. But what happens if you do read his stuff? What is it about Icarus? Why was he expecting him specifically? What's with that Zeus promise and shit? This, genties and gentle titties, is what I'm here for today. This will be a video going on about God of War 3's awesome notes and writings, but obviously the main goal of this video is to also talk about the brilliance of the labyrinth and its architect, Daedalus. We will go over the other notes sprawled across the game's map, of course. They are an important part of this video, but the main event is the last chapter in this video, which happens to be Daedalus Schematics. Now, one small little thing before we continue in this video is that I want to clarify. I'm not going to be covering every single thing literally written in the game. Some of them are just way too obvious and they state what's in front of you in text form. So with that out of the way, buckle up, put on your questionable outfits, because this is about to be a nice video that goes deep into these notes of the game. They are interesting, pay close attention, I won't be repeating myself, and let's read into it. God of War 3 starts with a classic philosopher message regarding power. You, as a clinical video gamer who never read anything beyond the subtle art of not giving a fuck, may have just scoffed at this killer line that essentially gives you all you need as an objective conclusion to what Kratos is in this game. Yes, I'm coming at the people who still deny the subtle and at the same time clear message of this game. What I'm trying to say is, if you still don't believe that Kratos is a villain in this game, all you need is this line right here from Mr. Platonas of Greek. The measure of a man is what he does with power. The line is supposed to be read twice, once when you boot up the game for the first time, and then again when you're done with the game and get a full meaning of why this line specifically was used. Now the reasons why I say it must be read twice is for the following. So the first time you see it, you're supposed to question what exactly happens in this game. What will Kratos do with power? The man in question in here is obviously Kratos, so what will he do with power? I'm inexperienced, I still haven't played the game. The second time you read it, which I mentioned happens after you beat the game, you're supposed to have already interpreted what it means. Here's what Kratos did with power. If you think for the slightest moment that God of War 3's campaign in totality was justice, you are sadly mistaken. Kratos was put to the test in this game. I'm not saying he didn't have his reasons, but a lot of the stuff were overblown. You are in the underworld, and the first thing you do is burn a man alive. Now granted, your trust was completely broken by the one creature you thought loyal, but did this have to do with any about that? This man is practically locked up Mimir style. Anyways, sinking the entirety of the Pantheon, letting the dead yearn for pretty much nothingness with zero attempt at fixing it, taking off the sun from the sky, this fucking shit, that fucking shit, this and that and those freaking shticks, and finally the cream of the crop that put the Pantheon in its endgame, and then by the end, you end yourself. People like to say he did this to give hope to mankind, but who exactly? There's nothing left! You didn't do this for the betterment, don't lie to yourself, you did it to feel nice, this was selfish, not selfless. You brutalized Poseidon to feel nice, among other examples here and there. Some of the others did deserve punishment, but most of this was uncalled for. Most of the brutal acts were turning this man on.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is.
And this right here is no difference. Crazy how this right here is the first ever recorded conversation between a man and a woman where the woman uses logic to win the argument and the man gets emotional and does some stupid shit. This was not done for the people. This was done to feel satisfaction, to get back at Athena. There's your stupid little power. So you see, when you return to this line after having finished the game, you're expected to interpret it the right way. The measure of a man is what he does with power. Well, Kratos abused that power. Used it for utter beerus attitude. What's left is chaos for these fools. This land isn't even worth ruling anymore. A simple definition for Plato's line is that a man's integrity and true character is shown by what he does with power. This is what Kratos did with power. Now we move on to the next piece of text in the game, and this one isn't just any text. It showcases the balance of the mountain right in front of you at the very start, and it foreshadows your return here later on.
I'm still in a dream, snake eater.
It is a very nice early foreshadow. Moving on in the prologue, we have a nice bit of history. Ares buried into the mountain. I don't exactly see why they respected him this much, even going as far as to make a nice gate for him outside, but it is a very neat thing to see. But after two segments in the prologue that contained writings in them, this next one is the most important and amazing one in the prologue. Up next, after we enter Gaia and make it to her heart through the sheer power of love, you can climb this wall to reach a secret area. Lo and behold, of all things, this secret area happens to be where Zeus was taking shelter inside of Gaia all the years before now. This is pretty much where Zeus was as a kid and where he grew up. It is a very wonderful way to round it back to that God of War 2 cutscene. It is very beautiful. The spot shows us the scheme that Zeus came up with to free his siblings from the belly of Kronos. Though from what it seems in here, it differs from the actual mythology. Where in the actual mythos, Zeus gives Kronos a potion that makes him vomit his siblings out. Shout out to the puke sample collector Zimnas, this is a big one for you, man. Cheers. In God of War's universe, it seems that Zeus ripped open Kronos' belly in true God of War fashion. You can even see his little siblings coming out and shit, the stuff of nightmares. I wonder what Kronos felt during the whole operation. Overall, a really nice way to give us a glimpse at Zeus' shelter inside of Gaia. Very beautiful painting and very beautiful writing. Moving on. We now move on to a part of the game that has some of the best notes in the entire game.
I'm in the abandoned city of Pripyat.
I'm inside one of the ancient down oil tanks.
We are currently here in the underworld, the place people go to when they die. The book we have is the opener of this awesome section of the game and basically tells you all you need to know. Here's the end of the great journey that all must embark on, where none can turn back. Truly setting it in that this place will have all your regrets gathered up in one focused spot. There is nothing to be done here other than being an exception I'll get into in a bit. Proceeding a little bit in the underworld, literally after 3 encounters, the place already makes it clear what it wants to do with its notes. The developers have these notes sprawl around the underworld to make Kratos feel a certain way. They're here to evoke a feeling of longing or reflecting on the past. It is torturous, but this is essentially what it is. The people you yourself killed? Their memories are shared here. Starting us up with the first note that isn't exactly written by somebody Kratos killed, rather somebody Kratos will kill in 5 minutes from now. Perithos. The note reads, "This oppressive darkness is no place for a delicate flower to bloom. Tonight, I honor Hades' request and join his table, but I swear on the morrow, I will leave this foul place with you at my side. Nothing shall keep me from you, my darling Persephone." The story of Perithos is one of ambition. This note was written before he got tricked by Hades into his throne, or his trap. Hades essentially told him to sit on the throne of forgetfulness. Perithos does, and we find him in what seems to be years later right here before we burn him to crisp. Persephone, whom Perithos mentions, already died by the hands of Kratos. He was ambitious enough to go and try to take her while she's Hades' wife, however stupid that is of a mortal to attempt, and this is how he ended up. So there is that, a note containing 2 souls that Kratos killed. This note right here is one of the few notes that isn't all that insane. The game simply teaches you about the side story of Perithos and just leaves it at that. You're expected to read this note, go find him strapped on the chair and kill him. That's it, that's the tragedy of this Greek story. It doesn't dive that insanely into the whole story, but it tells it in its own subtle way. This is what you get for defying the gods. The note isn't anything that insanely interesting. You see the setup, then the results, then double down on the results. However, the note after this is a very melancholic note that opens up the deepness of this video that I decided to make. Though I'd like to let you all know this is still puzzling to me who exactly wrote this exact note. It is a very beautiful message that I connected with, but I could just never figure out who exactly wrote it. So if you figure out, I'd be happy to know who in the God of War universe wrote this note, since the game keeps it a mystery. Anyways, after killing Perithos and taking the bow of Apollo from him, we burn a wall of fire and Pandora's melody starts playing. This is the theme that is currently playing in the background as I'm talking. It is a subtle cry of tragedy and sorrow sung by a little girl that never was. Pandora. The theme plays conveniently here as we reach this note, and it reads, "The melody, it plays on and will not stop. The voice sings of pain and loss, these things I know too well but still can bear. It is when the voice sings of hope that I learn true anguish, a longing for that which I can never have." Truly a beautiful message that leaves me wondering who the hell is this speaking. The game leaves it a secret. A part of me likes it very much because it's a secret. You really can never go wrong or right on who exactly, wrote this note. Point is that it could literally be anyone. It was a nice addition to have the note unsigned. Leaves the player wondering who this is. I'm gonna leave this to you guys to decide. After all, Kratos ran into a lot of souls throughout the God of War franchise. Hard to pinpoint exactly who wrote this note here. But it is a very beautiful note. It being a mystery sort of adds to the beauty of the message rather than subtract. The music playing as well makes it 10 times better, and the note itself mentions the music that is playing in the background, which is Pandora's melody. It is just a very beautiful note that highly inspired the making of this video, and I just love it so much. Okay, let us move on now. Moving on to the next note, it is located right here at this spot, though this one has a special treatment to it. You see, usually when we interact with these notes, in the header it says that the note was scrawled by a tortured soul. This one is different. It says the note was written by a young soul. This is the only unique note in the underworld that is not written by a tortured soul, rather a young, untouched soul. Already setting up what's to come, and little do you know, it is tragically written by a child. It is the cries of a child in its last moments, trying to write down what happened as if trying to remember a bad dream. Calliope, the daughter of Kratos, says, "The fires, the people screaming. I was so scared. Why didn't Father protect us? The judges say I have to go now to Elysium and that it will be nice there. I miss my family." Just what a beautiful addition at everywhere in this note. The start literally has the shock of the little girl as things happen so quickly. She questioned why her father didn't protect them, not knowing that he himself was the one that killed her and her mother. The father she needed for help was also the one that channeled his inner Chris Benoit. This one did not take a long time to figure out. Very obviously it is Calliope, the daughter of Kratos. Nice touch at the end that says the judges moved her to Elysium. I suppose she got her memories wiped there, and we all know how the rest in God of War Chains of Olympus played out. A very, very beautiful tale. This one really is special. Let us move on. The next note after this one is almost just as haunting, and it reads, "He was my responsibility. It was my burden to raise him, teach him right from wrong. All who get too near him suffer or die. His wife, his child, his brother, and now me. I failed him as a mother, as a human being. His sins are mine to bear. Punish me for his shortcomings, and grant my son redemption." This one is very obvious. The comment about being a mother gave it away. This is Kratos' mother who wrote this note. God of War Ghost of Sparta did come in and retcon the events of all of this, where Kratos first kills his mother and then his brother. But I suppose it doesn't make that big of a difference. It is by all means horrific, and maybe she got the news of Deimos dying later on. But still, she blames herself for all the hurting Kratos brought, and in the most motherly fashion still seeks redemption for Kratos. Truly beautiful. Through all of this and the horrible actions of Kratos, the mother is still blaming herself and saying, "Pin it on me. Just give redemption to Kratos," which, of course, never comes. Let us move on to the next note. The next note is the infamous note we all know of. It reads, "He could have saved me. He held my life in his hand, and still he let go. I may have been just a mere boat captain, but he treated me as if I was nothing. He is to blame for my torment here. I hope he suffers in Hades as I have. Damn that ghost of Sparta!" Quite interesting that they kept bringing him up in the games after God of War 1. I wish he was some secret lost soul that you could grab kill him. Maybe hear his voice, but it is what it is. I just made his voice impression, that's enough for you. Moving on. The next note is a very interesting one, and it happens to be the last scribbled note in the underworld, and it reads, "Hades, I beg at your palace gates, grant me a reprieve. Have I not become all you have wanted? Are my debts not paid in full? How long must I hope for a rescue that will never come? He becomes a god, while I rot and suffer. Release me, so that I may have my revenge." Now, when I read this, I didn't instantly catch on, but later on it was simple to get who wrote this note. A certain petty loser from a long time ago. This is an awesome reference to the barbarian king, Alric, as his name is implied in the novels. This note seems to be written a while after his initial death in God of War 1. It seems that Hades didn't allow him to escape the underworld easily, or at all even. When Alric says this line in God of War 2,
"I have fought my way through the guardians of Hades, and crawled my way out of the fires of torment to change my fate."
I really guess he meant it literally. Maybe Hades just never approved of him initially. but only later decided to hate him. All in all, a really nice reference to the Barbarian King. Really awesome how it shows that Alberich already had plans to return the moment he heard the news of Kratos becoming a god. A very nice note that I never paid attention to before, and it happens to be the last note written by a tortured soul in the underworld. It sort of puts in perspective how strong the Barbarian King truly was. I mean, he did really beat Kratos initially, and like in the initial timeline, if Kratos didn't call for help from Ares, this would have been it. The Barbarian King is as ambitious and powerful as Kratos, but he was just he was gone too soon. That was probably it. This was a really nice closure to this section of the underworld. We will now be proceeding to the later relevant writings in this beautiful game, so let us proceed. We now enter the territory of lore dumps in the game. God of War 3 follows a structure in its writings and notes, except for one little case that we'll get to in a little bit. The prologue has lore writings for the most part. That is the focus. The underworld, which we just finished, covers the people who Kratos hurt in a way, be it emotionally or physically. The current one we get to right now is rounding us back to the lore dumps, although a bit more than the prologue. We just got done climbing the chain of balance, this gigantic chain we saw at the start of the game, and it takes us to the Chamber of the Flame. In the Chamber of the Flame, we have these walls that cover secret lore about the mythology. You have to light them up with Helios head, and then they get shown to you and you can read them. We will start from the far left to the right, and we will cover all of them. We start with the first one that shows us a nice picture, the Flame of Olympus. It reads, "Death awaits all who touch the flame, god or mortal. Yet even this power pales against that which is protected in its core." Very self-explanatory and to the point. The Flame of Olympus kills all, even its own key, Pandora. We then move on to the next painting, and it is magnificent. It essentially covers the entire map of the game. I even have a screenshot of it. It is very cool. We start here in the prologue at the top of the mountain. Then we get Zeus furied into the underworld, which happens to be the lowest realm located right here. We then rise up to the city of Olympia after beating Hades, then we fly our way to the caverns. More on that later. Then we ascend back near the top of the mountain where the chamber is located, where we kill Hermes and Hercules. Then, due to the clash between Kratos and Hercules, we descend back down to what seems to be a special part of the mountain between, like, the underworld and the gardens of Olympus, where we then enter a portal that brings us back to the underworld. From there on, after killing Kronos and beating the Olympus Gardens puzzle, we find ourselves in the caverns again. This is what seems to be the lowest point of the caverns, possibly the lowest cube there ever is. After a bunch of difficult fights, we arrange the caverns and get the labyrinth into a complete cube. From there on, we go back down to the underworld to break the chain of balance. After that, we ascend to the top of the mountain to pull the labyrinth up and destroy the entire balance. The end. This painting right here depicts the entirety of the events that unfold. It is my favorite one in the chamber. As for what it reads, it says, "Balance of power. The muses guide souls in life, the three judges in death. And in the realm between them, the key to the flame guides the balance of power." The muses are pretty much the guiding light to what you seek in this adventure. They rightfully guide you to where you need to be upon beating their puzzle. They're high and mighty on the top of the mountain, meant for the living. Meanwhile, the judges of the underworld are the lowest part of the world. The grittiness, the dirtiness, the underworld. You get judged there upon your death. They guide and Christopher judge you when you're dead. As for what's in between the judges and the muses, it's kinda crazy how it's flat out Pandora herself. Kinda skyrockets her importance in all of this. It kinda just explains why Zeus was so protective of her as well. Which makes the question of how did Hephaestus ever even create her even more important. She's pretty much the breaker of the balance. No wonder she's trapped that deep into the heart of the mountain. Overall, a really nice painting and a beautiful explanation on how all the things work in this pantheon. Everything is greatly interconnected and makes the mountain one complete mechanism, all connected with the chain of balance. A very nice concept, just like Pandora's Temple in God of War 1, except in here, it is the entire map of God of War 3 in one picture. Sort of taking the whole concept of God of War 1's temple and making it an entire game. Some people like it, some people don't like it. I of course like it because I'm a shill. We then move on to the next painting that depicts the judges of Hades, giving us a closer look into how things work when it comes to the chain. Judges of Hades. In the judges' hands, the fate of Olympus lies. for it is they who control the great chain and determine its release. Determine its release, they don't, because Kratos is involved in this mission. The judges of Hades are very important and instrumental to the story of God of War as a whole. They get teased way early on the moment you get to the underworld. There you can see them right here in the distance. They get a proper introduction in this scene right here. They get shown stopping you from messing with the balance, and ultimately, they remain in Kratos' memory as a vivid larger-than-life mechanism that kicked off the destruction and confirmed it for him at the last moments. In Kratos' last moments before ever ascending and wreaking havoc of Olympus, the moment the chain got destroyed, it left a huge mark on the world, basically signaling Armageddon for whoever was left aware of this world. The breaking of the chain shook the world and simultaneously informed Kratos that there is nothing left. The mountain is ready to be destroyed, and Kratos did not waste a single second, especially after Pandora called him. This is why they sort of remained in his memory so long after, and we can see them in Valhalla right here, way larger than what they initially were. The underworld was already fucked with souls roaming eternally with no direction. Now there is no judgment upon the proper first stages of death. You are left a husk the moment you die in this world now. No judges of Hades. Sort of explains the significance they have in Kratos' mind, and that's about it. The next piece of lore talks about the Muses, which happen to be the rival to the judges of Hades. These guys, they guide the living, and the message for them reads, The Muses. In music, untold truths be spoke to those willing to hear it. Join your voice to the Muse song and lift Olympus' burden. Foreshadowing you literally lifting the burden of Olympus to the top of the mountain. There's nothing really that insanely crazy about the Muse's painting. It's very straight to the point. The painting after, we got the Gear of Burden. With the weight of Olympus upon it, the Gear of Burden is not easily moved, requiring a great sacrifice to free the heart of the labyrinth. It is interesting that it brings up a great sacrifice. Does this mean sacrificing the creator of the labyrinth to free the heart of the labyrinth? Heart of the Labyrinth is Pandora herself, so it can't be her specifically that is mentioned in this message. Either way, whoever the sacrifice may be, it is done. Kratos murdered everyone in his path. Most likely subject that this text brings up is Daedalus himself. He got killed in the process of assembling the labyrinth itself, so it's kinda on the nose there. The note after that happens to be the last note, and it is also very self-explanatory. Heart of the Labyrinth. Beating in the heart of the labyrinth is a passion great enough to douse even the flame of Olympus and lay bare to the power that lies within. Pandora herself, still a mystery how she was born. Was it Hephaestus' passion that made her come to be? What exactly was it? That level of power created by sheer accident. The game keeps on building up Pandora to be this very important mystery, and it's just something about it is very eerie in a way as well. It kind of makes you think. This level of importance is far beyond the understanding of mortals and gods in this pantheon. So the best choice of action is to protect her and keep her away from the hands of mortal and god. We will get to a point later on in the video where curiosity got the best of Poseidon, but even him, Zeus protected Pandora from even his brother. It's not just Kratos he didn't want near Pandora. Zeus knew the sheer importance of Pandora and just tried to protect her in the ultimate mechanism that we'll get to even later on. It is insane. But now with the chamber's final piece of lore out of the way, we move on to the next bit of writing in this game. It is actually going to be considered a miscellaneous note right after we make it to the grand theme of this game's writings. I say it's going to be included in the miscellaneous part of this video by the read-through and all that because it really is. It's a sort of in-between, you know, lore and the last part of this video, the last segment, so let's cover it. We move on way too much from here and we land in the chamber of Poseidon where his sex slave happens to be imprisoned there. This happens to be the story of Poseidon and his sex slave. Roll the opera music please. This is head-ass what you write upon the regret after busting when you're 15. But in all seriousness, Poseidon had the famous gamer YouTuber problem. You don't understand the mental toll it takes to wake up every day and have passionate sex with a busty Latina. It just eventually takes a toll on you, man. But let's leave the jokes aside. This ain't pre-Ragnarok, Zesty. This is the story of Poseidon and his anxiety as it grew more and more due to Zeus' actions and decisions. We find a note after freeing his princess, and it reads, "Dearest beloved, I ask your forgiveness for making you the subject of my rage. It is not you who angered me so, but my brother and his refusal to harness the great power he hides within the labyrinth. A storm is brewing and Zeus provides Olympus with no harbor. Only the comforts found in your arms give me rest. Your lord, Poseidon. Way to close an email. Poseidon's little story here dives into his thought process in the years before God of War 2. He sort of starts getting anxious and acts uncharacteristically worried. Poseidon, infected with the fear toxin Kratos spread throughout Gotham ever since he opened the chest, was feeling a little scared in this period of time. He sort of felt a dark storm approaching, provoking dark clouds in isolation. As in, he had a motherly feeling that some motherfucker is about to come and destroy all of them. Worried as he is, he starts getting really mad at Zeus' decisions regarding the great power in the box. Zeus, refusing to use it, constantly leads to Poseidon getting mad, which he then would take it out on a woman, like some movie made in the 40s. But also, that was his only escape. Of course, Zeus had his reasons to not open the box. After all, he is smart. He knew that the balance of the entirety of Olympus sort of depended on the heart of the labyrinth, but beyond that, he may have overthunk all of this even more. He may have slowly caught on to their illness ever since the box got opened. Perhaps not entirely aware of something called the power of fear, but still, he may have caught on that him and all the other Olympians weren't the same since Kratos opened that box. So he had multiple reasons not to open it, but he also wasn't quite completely sure. Poseidon, likely unaware of the theory of the gods, enshrouded with the evil powers from the box, was just mad that Zeus was delaying all of it. Poseidon was thinking a bit more rashly, like a stupid little, younger brother that just wants to get us the box, it'll solve everything. Meanwhile, Zeus was the true overthinker enjoyer who knew, like, what if the box opens and we get even more corrupted? Zeus sort of caught on that, look at us, we're not the same, we're not the golden god statues we used to be. We later find another note, and this is the last bit of this story, and it reads, "A mere girl. Somehow she is the key to the labyrinth. I brought this statue here, but so far have learned nothing. That mortal Daedalus in his sheer madness has devised a way to shield secrets from even my far-reaching view. This does not bode well. I fear Zeus is no longer the brother I once knew." This one right here is interesting and implies that Poseidon was sort of trying to figure out and dive deeper into the whole thing, but with no luck. He brought one of the Pandora statues here, supposedly to experiment, but there was nothing to be found. Of course, curiosity didn't just get the best out of Poseidon. Even Hephaestus, the creator of Pandora, tried to experiment with the statues just in hopes of recreating her with no luck. Even someone else we'll get to in the future started experimenting. But this is Poseidon. It's very uncharacteristic that this man was going out of his way trying to sort of figure out something, maybe recreate the power of Pandora. But alas, we learned that Poseidon sort of didn't know that Pandora is being hidden in the labyrinth, as he shows a face of shock in relation to the news that Pandora is hidden deep in the labyrinth. And he's frustrated that even he himself can't reach it. All in all, the story went sadly nowhere. I guess it was meant to go nowhere. A sort of story that tells you how Poseidon was operating all these years until the events of the game. He would have gone on in this same exact lifestyle had Kratos not knocked the door on Olympus that one morning with the Titans. You could think far ahead and maybe wonder, what would have Poseidon done? Maybe Poseidon would have broke out of this whole thing and he would have battled Olympus to get into the labyrinth and all that, but
I guess we'll never know.
Because Kratos comes in and does the task like a real man. But I overall am a bit sad that there is no other notes regarding this sub-story. It sometimes feels like it's missing, a sort of revolution for Poseidon or something. Him letting go of the secret and whatnot, but at the same time I kinda understand it. Maybe this implies that if Kratos didn't exist, for example, if Kratos didn't wage war and declare his war against Olympus, maybe it was Poseidon that would have done the same thing. Poseidon's curiosity would have gotten the best of him at the final moments, and maybe he would have went on to his adventures to get the labyrinth.
I guess we'll never know.
But after all of that, we are done with this side story of Poseidon and his anxiety. We move on to the climax, the absolute best piece about this entire video that I'm making here. This right here is the biggest part of this video and the biggest link to God of War 1's style of storytelling. we enter the Daedalus Schematics section of this video. This is a section that dives deep into Daedalus and his process of building the labyrinth. This man cooked for Gordon Ramsay, it seems, because not even the gods could figure their way around this cube. So how I'm gonna be going over this story is gonna be in chronological order and not the messed up order the game has for the notes. Basically, the game has these notes spread around the map in a schizophrenic way, and it leaves it to the player to put them all chronologically together by the end, to find out the process that Daedalus went through as he was building the labyrinth. What I'm here to do is to make that process convenient for the viewer and go through them chronologically and not in the way they're thrown around the map. Because that would sort of be confusing and random. The first note you find of Daedalus is day 1, all good. But then the next note you find is day 4000 or something. Like, bro, no. So for that reason, I myself have decided to arrange them from day 1 all the way to the final days of building the labyrinth, and I'm gonna be giving my thoughts about them. You're gonna listen to what the man had to say chronologically, day by day as he was making the labyrinth, all the experiments and all the things and all the strategies. And yeah, let us finally begin the brilliance of this fine piece of work. So the whole tale and story of Daedalus and how he built the labyrinth sort of begins after you kill Kronos. It is, again, oddly linked to how the story of Pathos begins in God of War 1, after climbing Kronos to the temple. So there is always some Kronos involved in what kicks off a huge sub-story in God of War 1 and 3. Anyway, you make it to this room with the crossbow, and this is where you're exposed to the entire work process of Daedalus. It is essentially a ballroom made for Daedalus to work in. This room specifically is not just notes that you read, it is paintings and concept arts drawn by Daedalus himself as he was documenting the mad creation. But not all of the notes regarding the creation are here. Some are located after this section, but this spot right here has the most notes collectively in one spot, and this is where it all began. Now, I'm a content creator and I know how a lot of these things sort of work. Trust me, it may not be on the same scale, but it sort of follows the same formula. This was an enormous project built by mortals, and what this room does is wonderful on a different level. It shows us the first day and the last days of completing the labyrinth. More on that as we get to it, of course, but the last ever note in regards to building this whole labyrinth is located in this exact room. We'll get to it later. So let's round it back to the whole philosophy of how this labyrinth was being built. As is with every big project, you don't really know where to begin, how it'll end up. A bunch of things will intervene. The truth is, you may not even have it fully figured out at the start. You start experimenting, a bunch of outside things intervene, and then eventually, brilliance is born. This is a thing even I witness at such a small scale when compared to what Daedalus is making. This is basically the process of making a big project on video every time I make it. I hit points in the middle of writing some gigantic script and I suddenly think about how hard the thumbnail will be to make. Just my mind goes everywhere. How will the intro be? How will the background music be? How will the thumbnail be? Or then in the midst of making a big project of mine, it could be a combat guide or whatever, some event happens in my outside life and it affects the project. By the end, the project comes out as this thing born out of an environment that constantly presented things. You pretty much figure things out as you go. Daedalus had the same things going for his project. Happy first days, lost in the middle, ultimately came together by the end. Wonderful. So let us unpack the labyrinth crafted by Daedalus. So the first ever node is a very optimistic message from Daedalus. This is the starting stage of a project. You're excited. This is the first interactable. It even has those cute concept cubes on the right that show a rough idea of what he was going for. A commission from the gods. This shall be my greatest work. In return for building a device to protect what is most precious to Zeus, he has fittingly promised that most precious to me, the return of my boy, Icarus. So, already we see the humongous motivation behind the entire project. There is a promise by a god no less, but still a promise. sort of identical to some other mortal that once took the promise of a god seriously. But there's a first time for everything. Daedalus, by the end of his ultimate project, will come to find out the harsh truth of believing a promise from Zeus. Even though it's Kratos' fault that Zeus' promise didn't come to be, but the point still stands. Build the ultimate mechanism. Have your son back. Daedalus put all his energy on the project due to that wonderful promise. All he ever wanted was the return of Icarus, and we will see the depths this man goes through just to achieve that which was already lost and dead. Sort of like some other individual that kind of had in his mind that his family would return. But at least, Kratos was a realist for the majority of his time serving under a god's promise. It got to a point where he accepted that they'll never return, so the motivation switched. He started wanting the nightmares, the memories to be over. But even then came this in Kratos' mind, thanks to a spell cast on him by Ares. This moment right here is a very relatable moment that I connected with. It's frankly so relatable it's scary, at least for me. At the peak of your acceptance of loss, there's still that part of you that wants what was lost back, even when it seems impossible. Doesn't matter even if the individuals you want back are dead, confirmed dead. In a moment like this, even a guy who had accepted the loss still had a drop of hope that his wife and daughter are real in this painfully obvious illusion by Ares. I've been there before, multiple times. Kratos has been through this. Multiple times. Multiple wives. I've had my fair share of moments of pure patheticacy, holding on to that one thread that has the slightest teensy bit of copium left in it that tells me, what if she and I return back together? What if one day she returns and nothing is wrong all of a sudden? Of course, these days I laugh it off by verbalizing what goes through my mind to myself, sort of shuts down the idea, force stops it. It brings the stupid illusion to reality and exposes it for such cope that it is. That's not happening. She vaporized my soul, left. I shouldn't accept her back. Instant snap back to reality and back to realism. Daedalus is holding on to that dream. Sad for him, a part of him even knows Icarus will never be back, given that the events taking place here are before God of War 2, where Icarus is dead. Icarus of course escapes the underworld, come God of War 2, where he wants to change his fate to save his father. His father, that is, also trying to save him. You instantly have this complete opposite dynamic to what Kratos is to Zeus and vice versa. This is a father trying to save his son, and a son trying to save his father. So far, yet so close. But they share the same goal, that is ultimately what matters. Us, the player, know that Icarus is dead for good. And he's not just dead for good, we killed him. We will be the Icarus to reach the labyrinth, not the actual Icarus that Daedalus was expecting. Tragically enough, the labyrinth was designed with Icarus in mind. This section here, when we first make it to the labyrinth, notice the equipment we use to get there. The wings of Icarus. Even the cage that is protecting the heart of the labyrinth. It conveniently has Icarus statues on the sides. This place really was made for Icarus in a way, expecting him to make it here one day. Icarus is right there along with the heart of the labyrinth. You may think only Pandora is the heart of the labyrinth. Think twice. Icarus statues are right there in the middle, in the heart of the labyrinth. So Daedalus made this wholeheartedly in expectation to have Icarus back here. Except, unbeknownst to all, it's not exactly Icarus himself flying in. It's his murderer, Kratos. Icarus died an eternal death. Daedalus isn't even aware of the destruction of the underworld. The souls are roaming forever with no one to judge them. So Zeus can never really live up to his promise, yet he still manipulated Daedalus to make the labyrinth, even though he knew he couldn't really bring back Icarus. Shit. There is marginally zero way for Icarus to come back now. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This was the first note and it carried a lot of themes with it. Let's get to the next time Daedalus updated his journal. We then move on to the next note that Daedalus had in his journal. It seems that Daedalus' first plan were to dive into what operates and brings together the puzzle. What powers it basically. The key to the key, as I like to call it. This note was written on day 275 and it reads, "Further experiments with hydraulics have failed. These workings are too massive for any traditional machinations. I hope that my trip to Hades to investigate the workings of the judges might reveal a new source of energy. I have heard rumors of a fire more pure than any mortal source. With every failure, I feel my son slip farther away." This is obviously moments of feeling like the task is impossible. Feelings of doubt start to kick in, but they're not slowing him down all that much. His next goal was to aim for the underworld to get the same type of energy that puts the 3 judges to work. We can see that he has a very nice plan at least, but feelings of doubt never truly leave you when you're making a project. There's always feelings of doubt. He heard of some powerful fire on this stage of experimentation. Let's see where that leads. The next time Daedalus documents a discovery is in this note, day 452. Zeus asks of me the impossible. He does not see that the harder he drives me, the more my vision slips through my fingers. Yet thoughts of my son never fade. The scale of this project is unlike any before, and I continuously seek a power source worthy. Taking apart these statues of Hephaestus have been a futile waste of effort. It seems only the original has any value. Tomorrow I shall ask of the fire of Hades. This right here is a very relatable thing as well in regards to big personal projects. The interference of other people who think they know your job better than you. What we see here is Zeus throwing in his ideas at the project. He thought that by dissecting and experimenting with Pandora's statues, Daedalus would find the energy he needs to put the labyrinth to work. We can see that by the obvious Pandora statue right here, so start experimenting on it the same way Poseidon did, the same way Hephaestus did. This is a very reasonable thing to be curious about, a sort of way to analyze these statues. What if one of them operated like the real Pandora? What if we have 1 billion Pandoras? How powerful can we be? But of course, things don't work that way. The architect gets tired of cutting up these statues with no luck, so he goes back to his task and does his thing his way. It is always annoying when someone else starts intervening with your project. It's like having a manager that doesn't know your job better than you do. He obviously doesn't. You know your work better than he knows your work. So this puts this in the same sort of ballpark. Zeus starts interfering with the project. Don't, just let the man cook. Let's see what Daedalus came up with in the next documentation. The next note can be found right here in the ballroom. This is day 1026. Yes! Combining the gift of Boreas with the fires has provided me with an incredible new energy. The muses guide my hand and the desire to see Icarus drives me on, but I cannot help but take pause. The torturous pain that this invention of mine will cause. I shudder to think of it. Pray that none will be foolish enough to attempt to take from Zeus what is his. It seems that I have created again that which would go better unused. A lesson often learned too late. This one right here has Daedalus sort of reflecting on his own previous invention that led to his son's death. The wings of Icarus, used by his only son that flew too close to the sun. He is reflecting on the labyrinth over here and he hopes no one foolish enough will assemble it one day. It turns out he really jumped from the last time he documented something. The fire of Hades thankfully worked, but only in combination with the gift of Boreas, the ice storm. Kratos, who obtains the soul of Hades, also gets the fire of Hades along with the soul of Hades. It would be sort of logical if you ask me. And later, by acquiring the Boreas ice storm from Scorpius, he is able to navigate the labyrinth. We will figure out that even Daedalus caught on to Scorpius getting the gift of Boreas, but for now, we know that Kratos has the power to navigate the labyrinth later on. Daedalus finally came to the conclusion on how things could be ran in 1026 days. The gift of Boreas and the fire of Hades. So now, where does Daedalus go? What does he try to achieve next now that he has the energy tool to navigate the creation? We get to this note here in the ballroom that has this gigantic painting of the wings that were crafted for Icarus. A sort of reflection moment again. Daedalus is out here comparing his two ultimate creations, the wings of Icarus and the labyrinth. Both more ambitious than the other, both led to or will lead to his inevitable despair. This note was written on day 2782 and it reads, "My labyrinth, for that is what I call my creation now, approaches perfection. I feel the other gods' jealousy grow, as too does Zeus' impatience. I achieved perfection once before in you, my darling Icarus, and that too was ripped from my grasp." It seems that this note right here doesn't say much on the project itself, rather the people around the project, more specifically the gods that are growing jealous of Daedalus. Seemingly ones who doubted him at first but are now seeing the results, their jealousy grows. Meanwhile, Zeus' impatience is what's growing. He wants it built and he's in a vicious hurry. This entire time, Kratos has been giving him a bad time. Zeus was scared the moment Kratos turned into a god, which is understandable, but rushing Daedalus also wasn't the right thing. The project may have come out even more crazy and ambitious had Daedalus had all the time in the world, but alas, this is all the perfection you need. Moving on to the next note, we have this one right here located after defeating the Cyclopses upon our revisit to the labyrinth. This was documented on day 3287 and it reads, Zeus hovers endlessly over my shoulder. Even when gone, his presence is felt. It seems that the heart of the labyrinth will be both a lock and key. The judges of Hades define a latch. But I promise that if I do not get my son, all that it will unlock will be destruction and chaos. This right here is a very interesting note from Daedalus. He sort of unintentionally foreshadowed the destruction that would come about. But he didn't do it due to a lot of thinking of the consequences or anything. It was purely Icarus that planted the thought process in his head. Zeus' impatience combined with Daedalus starting to have doubts made for this thought process right here. He unintentionally jinxed the project's purpose in some weird way. The note after this is located one block away. It is right here prior to the Cyclops encounter that we just spoke of. This one was documented on day 3674 and it reads, On the great chain, the heart of the labyrinth hangs imbalanced between Hades and Olympus. If one side loses its grasp, the power in the labyrinth will rise or fall accordingly. The balance forever shifted. And as always, man will be caught in the wake. This is the first note that explains the concept as straightforwardly as possible. The note prior to this one poetically put that the judges are what's holding the labyrinth. But this one expands on the two ways this whole thing can bring about destruction. Basically, remember the painting that showed the labyrinth in the middle of the mountain? The labyrinth is tied between the upper echelon, which is the flame of Olympus with the box inside, and the lowest echelon is the three judges of the underworld. Daedalus looked at it in a fair way in both scenarios. He never doubted that someday someone might as well just up and lift the labyrinth due to the fall of the judges, or the vice versa happening, the upper echelon falling, as in Olympus falling, before the three judges, leading to the labyrinth falling down to the underworld. However, and whatever the outcome would have brought, even he doesn't know. What he does know, however, is that the doom of mankind is certain. Kratos worked it up smartly, didn't foolishly try to destroy the top of the mountain to drop the labyrinth. He did that so that the box does not get destroyed. After all, he trusts Athena. Of course, at the time Kratos didn't know that he had the power in him, so this right here is reasonable thinking. Destroy the judges, then pull the labyrinth up, however crazy that may sound. Destruction to the world of man happened exactly as Daedalus foresaw. So now we move on to the note after, which is located in the ballroom again. This note was documented on day 4319 and it reads, My son, you will delight in seeing how my labyrinth overshadows all in Olympus. Even the great chain of balance is but a mere tool to drive my works. How your laughter would fill the empty caverns. Though not as empty as I originally thought, more workers were found dead today. Is it not the way of the world that mortar must often be mixed with blood? This right here demonstrates the architect admiring his own work even though it's bringing hurt to his own people. Mortals are dying in the making of this, yet he's turning a blind eye for it. Says it's the way of life. The last saying where he talks how blood is mixed with mortar, which is an old architect myth that is even believable to an extent these days, demonstrates him and how he's lost in his power. This is again paralleling Kratos and what he did with power, hurting even his own kind with no remorse. What's also interesting is that how much he cares about it as a flex. The chain of balance is but a part of his excellence. Puts the perspective the stage Daedalus is in when nearing the final days of his work. Through all of that though, he seems to still not forget why he's here and what got him this far into his project. Icarus. Family. The same thing that was driving Kratos until he figured out it's not really the family that is driving him. It's his own joy. Kratos enjoyed the killing. Kratos enjoyed the blood that led to him even killing his own family. It's the same thing for Daedalus. A part of him is making it for Icarus. He likes to pretend that he's doing all of this for Icarus, but A very dark, evil nature part of him is also making it as a flex. He likes the power that he has over the gods. He's a mere mortal, yet he's making an architecture that the whole chain of balance is only there to work my architecture. How cool is that? He likes to cover it by, oh, look at me. Icarus got me this far. I still want Icarus after all these years, but you can't keep on lying to yourself. That is not the only driving force. The fact that just how big of a thing you're making is what's also driving you. It's not just Icarus. But through all of that, we also cannot just go ahead up and ignore the fact that he loves Icarus so much. He is making this as a flex. He is getting a bit more egotistical about this whole thing, but a big part of him is making this for Icarus. He feels the place empty without him. It is interesting that he's brought up again, especially with the painting in front of us that I mentioned previously. Icarus statues on the side of the cage that imprisons the heart of the labyrinth. Icarus, the heart of the labyrinth. Or at least he's a part of the heart. You could even say soul of the labyrinth. The mere idea of his return influenced this body of work. Daedalus, for how much he excelled, has a lot to thank Icarus for. Without him, this wouldn't be achieved. Now the next note was documented on day 4434. It reads, "Today, I sealed Zeus' treasure into the heart of the labyrinth. It does not seem right to sacrifice one child to gain another. Yet I would do anything to make Zeus fulfill his promise. Do not think less of me, Icarus. We have too much at risk. Let the philosophers debate morals while we inventors invent." Again, the final days of the project seems to all be Daedalus reflecting on side things and feelings. This one here is about the morals in all of this, gives us a perspective on his mind and what goes through it through all of this. The thought of morality in what you do happens in every big task. I'm in deep belief that even Kratos questioned the morality of a lot of his actions since the start of the franchise until this point. You're getting back your dear son, yes, but in the process you kill all these mortals working on your idea of the perfect architecture. You fuel your own ego, you ultimately imprison another child to get yours back. No part of any of this is moral in the slightest, and he knows. He goes on with it because he's numbing these feelings, leaving it to the philosophers to decide whether this is moral or not. I'm just here doing my job. Also, anything for Icarus. The same way Kratos did anything to wipe out the nightmares in God of War 1. The same way Kratos broke systems and rules of nature to get his revenge. The similarities keep growing. Daedalus and Kratos are so alike in what they did, it's insane, but we still have more to cover. The next note was documented on day 4593 and it reads, "Zeus has demanded a new cell to contain an additional prisoner. After seeing the judges of Hades myself, I can only feel remorse for the poor soul who will be tortured here. May they find release long before the chain of balance does." This is an interesting one that I think I know what it refers to. An additional cell is basically what's up ahead after you read this. Daedalus, he's in a cage. He's the additional prisoner, a prisoner of his own work. It makes sense because there are no other prisoners here besides him and Pandora, so it is obvious that this refers to him. It makes sense that Zeus took caution and made sure to set up a trap for Daedalus because, after all, he cannot fulfill his promise of bringing back Icarus. This was nearing the end of the entire project, pretty much just a couple of weeks off from it being done. Daedalus was already being schemed on from this point on by Zeus. Even the note after shows more of this whole scheming by Zeus. The note after is written a mere 5 days from the note we just went over above. It was documented on day 4598 and it reads, "I have lost the Boreas ice storm. It was to be your gift. My son would have been the master of the labyrinth. The search continues day and night, but the scorpions grow thicker every day. I fear the worst." Already obvious what's going on and building up on what we read in the note prior to this one. This is nearing the end of the project. Zeus doesn't need Daedalus anymore, so he starts fucking with him. Digs a grave for him in secret. Pretty easy to understand that this is Zeus's doing. He doesn't want Daedalus to have that much power. He doesn't want to build up another mortal and have him that powerful after he has achieved his task. No, he wants Daedalus out of the picture but not quite killing him. So he fools Daedalus into making a cage for his own self. He steals the Boreas ice storm to empower Scorpius, basically sabotaging and imploding the man's work little by little. Which leads us to the final note for the final day before the labyrinth is finished. The last note before the labyrinth ever came together was documented on day 4603, a whopping 12 years and a half in the making, and it reads, "My boy, the labyrinth is almost complete. Why have you not come to me yet? Together we will fly. I surmise that the naturally accruing drafts occurring along the chain shall be more than sufficient to..." Zeus summons me. I must go oversee the final efforts. And that right there was the last thing he could handwrite in regards to his work before Zeus imprisons him in the second cell that got made, basically for the creator of the labyrinth. The sheer excitement in the last day of the making. You can see Daedalus' excitement in the message as well. The entire time this whole thing's been built for Icarus, conveniently designed for him to reach. He even sees it happening before it ever does. He mentions the current of air that we use to get up to the caverns for the first time. Zeus calls him, and that's where the ultimate tragedy and betrayal happens. The imprisonment of the creator, Daedalus, which now, after all of we've been through, after reading the entirety of the process of how the labyrinth was made, the struggles and the optimism and the pessimism and the egotistical moments, it now leads us to the confrontation with Daedalus. After all the notes we read to understand the story and the expectation this man has, we now get to face him, and he's not driven himself to death like Pathos did in God of War 1. Thankfully, through all that and even the imprisonment, he's still expecting Icarus. After all, the place is designed for Icarus the best, but unfortunately for him, he meets someone with the wings of Icarus at best.
Who's there? My son! My beautiful Icarus! Ah, good. You have the ice storm. The scorpion must be defeated. The ice storm. That is the secret of the labyrinth. To escape it, we must assemble it. Oh, good. You've already started. I've seen the cubes moving into place. Now, once inside, you must use the gift of Boreas. It is the catalyst that drives the labyrinth. You're not... But you... What have you done with my child? My boy! Where is my boy?
Your son is dead, Daedalus.
My boy, my child. No! I took the gift of Hades, the liquid fire, and the ice storm to create the power of the labyrinth. Create the power! The power to create, the power to destroy. The king of the gods has forsaken me. He said that if I built the labyrinth, I would see the return of my son. He said that if I took the liquid fire... Oh, my boy. Oh, my child.
The child that never was, the child that was long lost. Twice. This scene all of a sudden has way more meaning than if you approach it without reading the notes or, putting the entire notes together chronologically. The expectations he had, the dedication to solve the labyrinth, even while he's trapped like this, is just tragic. Through all the time and effort, he's still guiding what he thinks is Icarus, when in reality this is Kratos in front of him, the murderer of his son. Fast forward to the assembly of the labyrinth and besting all of the challenges and the traps, one last message from Daedalus remains. A message scribbled with droplets of his blood, a realization that hit only after the efforts and so late into the passion, and it reads, "Spartan, no man was meant to make it this far. Though maybe you are not a man? I do not know you, but I suspect whatever brings you here means that you are no friend of Zeus. He must pay for breaking his promise and letting my son die. I can only hope that you complete your mission. What a fitting end to die in my greatest invention. The only thing I loved more was Icarus. Now I can be with him. Daedalus gives us his last message as he's dying, realizing the trick fate played on him, allying with Kratos against Zeus, for it is the only option left at such a point. Died in his own creation with one last hope remaining, the death of Zeus, the betrayal that shall not go with no repercussion. So really, this part of the message that Daedalus leaves sort of defines God of War 3 as well. It's not just Kratos or the Titans that got wronged by Zeus. It is an ongoing theme that a lot of people get wronged by him, and ultimately everyone allies with Kratos in some twisted way by the end. Even their death wish being a sort of assembly with Kratos for one greater good, being the death of Zeus. Since the start of this journey to kill Zeus, all the way back from God of War 2, Mr. Olympia simply wronged too many folk. It started with Gaia and the Titans wanting their revenge. This went on even with Prometheus, who we free in God of War 2. Then we got the entirety of Sparta wanting the death of Zeus. Then it started getting even more broad as a goal everyone desires. Come God of War 3 and Athena wants the destruction of Zeus. Fast forward and Prometheus wants the same, Hephaestus wants the same, Hera agrees to the goal, and finally it closes off with Daedalus wanting the same. It gets to a point where it's collectively agreed upon that Zeus must be eliminated. Daedalus' case happens to be the most hurtful because he served under him just to get nothing back in return. Very similar to Kratos' case. Kratos and Daedalus share a lot in common, and this right here was the finale of them sharing something. They both want the destruction of Zeus. Destruction of Zeus is what Kratos delivers. The end. This has been one of my favorite scripts to work on. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really nice and new for me too. I never knew such a great story exists within the walls of God of War 3. It is a whole secondary story in this game. This whole Daedalus Schematics side of the story was very, very interesting. This video was about all the writings of God of War 3, but as I said at the start, the last one with Daedalus is what I mainly am here for. I really hope you all enjoyed the video, and please let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. The goal for the next read-through would probably be God of War 1, since the story of Pathos Verdus is similar to this. In the meantime, this has been it for this video. It has been your Extreme Gamer Zestos. Take care and peace out.